Hey love, welcome back. This is My Married Boss Part 3. If you haven't listened to Part 1, go start from there. Now where did we stop? Let's continue. When we landed, the driver was waiting. The city stretched grey and indifferent around us. Snow still clung to the edges of buildings, stubborn and slow to melt. Serafina sat across from me in the car, not beside me. The distance felt deliberate. She made one phone call during the ride, clipped, professional, solving a problem in 3 sentences. When she hung up, she stared out the window, her expression unreadable. I wanted to say something. Did that night mean anything to you? Are we going to pretend it didn't happen? But the words stayed locked in my throat. Sterling Tower rose before us like a monument. We took the private elevator to the apex floor in silence. When the doors opened, I expected something. A glance, a pause, anything that said we shared something, and it mattered. Serafina stepped off the elevator, her heels clicking once against the polished concrete. She walked straight to her office without a word. The frosted glass doors slid shut, and I stood there, alone, feeling like I'd been erased. Monday started the way every Monday had started since I'd taken this job. I arrived at 7:30, made her coffee, black, single origin, the way she liked it. Prepared her morning briefing folder with color-coded tabs, red for urgent, blue for upcoming, green for reference. Everything perfect. At 8:28, the private elevator chimed. Serafina stepped out in charcoal grey, fitted trousers, silk blouse, her coat draped over one arm. She was devastating. "Good morning, Miss Sterling," I said, standing. She gave a single nod as she passed my desk. "Miss Cohen." Her voice was cool, professional, empty. I picked up her briefing folder and her coffee and followed her to her office, the way I always did. She stopped at the door, turned slightly, and said, without looking at me, "Email it." I blinked. "I have it here." "Email it." Her tone made it clear the discussion was over. Then she walked into her office and closed the door. I stood there with the folder in my hands and coffee going cold against my palm, feeling the first crack split through my chest. By Wednesday, the pattern had solidified. Meetings I'd attended since day one. Not necessary this time, Ms. Cohen. Documents I usually delivered in person. Send them digitally. The morning coffee ritual we'd developed. She started having it delivered directly to her office from the building's executive cafe. Every interaction was reduced to email. Every email was shorter than the last. From S. Sterling to L. Cohen. Subject, updates. Status report on Cheng contract by end of day. No greeting. No sign-off. Just instructions. I told myself it was temporary, that she was busy, that the divorce with Genevieve was consuming her attention, and this had nothing to do with me. But I knew. This was about the hotel room. Thursday afternoon, there was a quarterly strategy meeting. I'd attended everyone since I started. My notes were meticulous, the kind of documentation Serafina relied on when she needed to recall exact phrasing or timing. At 9:55, I stood from my desk with my tablet and notebook, ready to follow her into the boardroom. She emerged from her office, tablet in hand. I fell into step beside her. She stopped walking. I stopped too, confused. Serafina turned to face me, her expression perfectly neutral. "Not this one, Miss Cohen," she said. My stomach dropped. The meeting's being recorded. You can take notes from the playback. I need you at your desk in case the Singapore call comes through early." It was a reasonable explanation. It was also a lie. The Singapore call wasn't scheduled until 3 p.m. We both knew it. "Of course, Ms. Sterling," I said quietly. She held my gaze for one extra second. And in that second, I searched desperately for something. Regret. Conflict. Anything. I found nothing. She walked into the boardroom. The door closed, and I stood in the empty corridor, feeling like I'd been slapped. I returned to my desk and tried to focus on work. But my mind kept circling back to one question. What did I do wrong? I'd been professional. I hadn't pushed, I hadn't made the night in the hotel weird or complicated. I'd simply existed next to her, slept in her arms because there was no other choice. And somehow, that had been enough to make her want me invisible. Late that afternoon, I was formatting a presentation when I heard voices near the elevators. Serafina emerged from the boardroom with 2 senior executives, Harrison from acquisitions, and Chen from operations. They were laughing at something, that forced executive laughter that meant they were trying to impress her. Serafina's expression was polite, detached. As they passed my desk, Harrison glanced at me. "Your work has been excellent lately, Ms. Cohen," he said with a smile that felt too familiar. I gave a professional nod. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison." Serafina didn't even look at me. She walked them to the elevator, shook their hands with that cool efficiency of hers, and watched the doors close. Then she turned and walked back toward her office. She passed my desk without a word, without a glance, like I was furniture. The doors to her office slid shut, and I sat there staring at my screen, willing myself not to cry. Friday evening, I worked late finishing a contract summary she'd requested. At 7:30, I heard her office doors open. I looked up automatically. Serafina emerged with her coat on, bag over her shoulder. She walked past my desk without slowing. "Have a good weekend, Ms. Cohen," she said. "You too, Miss Sterling," I replied. She didn't look back. The elevator doors closed, and I sat alone on the apex floor as the city lights blinked on outside, feeling the loneliness settle into my bones like cold. Monday of week 2, I made a decision. I would stop trying to interpret her silences. I would stop looking for warmth in her emails. I would stop hoping she'd call me into her office for anything other than work. I would do my job perfectly, professionally, and I would protect what was left of my heart. Tuesday afternoon, I was at my desk when the private line rang. I answered on the second ring. Serafina Sterling's office. A pause, then a voice I recognized, smooth, controlled, expensive. "I need to speak with my wife." My chest tightened. "Miss Sterling is in a meeting. May I take a message?" "Tell her I'll be there in an hour. She can make time." The line went dead. I sat staring at the phone, my pulse too fast. 1 hour later, Genevieve stepped off the private elevator, bypassing my desk with that elegant, untouchable entitlement. "Miss Sterling." "Genevieve, wait," I said, standing up quickly, trying to intercept her, but Genevieve had already pushed open the frosted glass doors to Serafina's office. I reached the doorway just in time to see it. Serafina was standing by her desk. Genevieve stepped right into her personal space, reaching out, her perfectly manicured hands wrapping gently around Serafina's wrists. I froze. Serafina didn't pull away. She stood there, looking down at her wife. From my angle, I couldn't see Serafina's face clearly, only the rigid line of her back and the fact that she allowed the touch. She allowed the intimacy that she had spent weeks denying me. Genevieve murmured something soft, leaning closer. My stomach dropped into a bottomless, sickening pit. I stepped back, letting the door slide shut silently. She's going back to her, I realized. Of course she was. Genevieve was her wife, her equal, her history. I was just the assistant she shared a bed with during a blizzard. That was the day the hope finally died, and the day the defiance took root. I decided I was done bleeding for a woman who wouldn't even look at me. Tuesday, during my lunch break, I sat in the Nexus, the communal kitchen on the 30th floor, with my coffee and did something I'd been thinking about for days. I downloaded a dating app, not because I desperately wanted to date, but because I needed to remember there was a world beyond Serafina Sterling. A world where people looked at me and saw someone worth pursuing instead of someone to be kept at arm's length. I created a profile quickly, efficiently. Leah, 28, book lover, coffee addict, looking for something real. I added a photo, me smiling at a friend's wedding last year, before I'd taken this job. Before I'd met her. Within an hour, I had 23 matches. I scrolled through them, feeling nothing, because none of them were her. But maybe that was the point. By Thursday of week 4, I'd been messaging someone from the app for a few days. Maya, 29, architect, loves old buildings and thinks coffee is overrated. Tea person, sorry not sorry. She was funny, warm, easy to talk to. Everything Serafina wasn't. Wednesday night, she asked me out. There's a wine bar in the West Village, Thursday at 7, unless you're one of those people who only drinks coffee. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, I'd love to. See you at 7. I left before anyone would have any reason to make me stay. On Thursday, I was sitting in a dimly lit wine bar across from a woman named Maya, who had a nice laugh and didn't look at me like I was a problem to be solved. We were 30 minutes into the date, and I was actually smiling, when my phone vibrated in my purse. The screen flashed. S. Sterling. Private. My heart did a traitorous stupid leap, but I swallowed it down. I excused myself, stepping away from the table but still within earshot, and answered. Ms. Sterling, I said, keeping my voice crisp. The Q3 budget addendums. Serafina's voice came through, brisk and demanding. Where did you file them? It was 7:45 p.m. She didn't need those until Monday. They are in the encrypted drive under the finance subfolder. I don't see them. I can log on when I get home and resend the link, but I'm not at my computer right now. Before I could finish, Maya walked up behind me, holding 2 glasses. Hey, she said, her voice warm and carrying easily into the phone receiver. I ordered us the Pinot. The bartender says it's amazing. On the other end of the line, the silence was absolute. Who is that? Serafina asked. The brisk, executive tone was gone. Her voice was suddenly so low, so dangerously quiet. The hairs on my arms stood up. I'm on a date, Miss Sterling, I said, forcing myself to hold my ground. If it's an emergency, I can leave, but otherwise. I see, Serafina cut in. The ice in those 2 words could have frozen an ocean. I will find the file myself. Enjoy your evening, Miss Cohen. Click. She hung up. I went back to the table. But my hands shook for the rest of the night. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she would just let me go. Instead, Serafina built a cage. Starting the very next day, she began working late, every single night. And she made sure I stayed too. It was never anything urgent. A file that needed reorganizing. A schedule that needed color coding. We would sit on the empty Apex floor until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. She was making absolutely sure I had no time, no energy, and no freedom to go on another date. It was a slow, psychological torture, a maddening game of tug-of-war, where she refused to hold me, but refused to let anyone else touch me either. By the 3rd Friday of this hostage situation, it was 8:30 p.m., and I was exhausted. I was staring blankly at my monitor when the elevator chimed. Jade stepped out. She was wearing a stunning backless emerald dress, smelling of expensive perfume. When she saw me sitting at my desk in the dim light, she stopped dead in her tracks. Leah, Jade frowned. You're still here. It's Friday night. I gave a tired, hollow nod. Miss Sterling needed a briefing prepped. Jade's eyes narrowed. She looked toward Serafina's office, processing the reality of the situation with terrifying speed. Jade was Serafina's best friend. She knew exactly how Serafina operated, and she saw right through the bullshit. Jade walked past my desk and pushed the frosted doors open. I couldn't hear the conversation, but 2 minutes later, Jade walked back out. She stopped at my desk, leaning over with that warm, devastating smile. But there was a strategic, wicked glint in her eye. She was poking the bear. You don't look busy to me, Leah, Jade said, her voice a low, teasing purr that was definitely loud enough for Serafina to hear. Come downstairs. The bar in the lobby is quiet. Let me buy you a drink. My breath caught. I looked at Jade's offering hand. I was so tired of being invisible. I opened my mouth to say yes. The heavy glass doors slid open with a violent whoosh. Serafina stepped out. She wasn't wearing her suit jacket. Her white blouse was unbuttoned at the collar. Her sleeves rolled up, and her eyes were black with a storm that made the hotel blizzard look like a joke. She's not going anywhere, Serafina said. Her voice didn't echo. It cut. Jade turned lazily to look at her, looking incredibly amused. The file for my briefing tomorrow isn't ready, Serafina continued, stepping closer, her eyes locked solely on me, practically vibrating with tension. I need it before 9. I felt my blood turn hot. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the concrete. I sent it to you 2 hours ago, Miss Sterling. It is sitting in your inbox. Serafina stared at me. Her chest was rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. Not good enough, she said, her voice dropping to a low, vibrating threat. Do it again. Jade looked at Serafina's clenched jaw, then at my defiant posture. A slow, knowing smirk spread across Jade's lips. Her mission was accomplished. It's okay, Leah, Jade said softly, giving me a blatant, lingering look. We'll go for our drink tomorrow night instead. I'll pick you up at 8. Jade didn't wait for Serafina to explode. She gave me a slow wink, a silent "you're welcome," turned on her heel, and stepped into the elevator. Serafina watched the doors close. Her jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle twitched violently in her cheek. Without a word, she spun around and stalked back into her office. This time, I didn't sit down. I followed her. I walked straight into her office and shoved the heavy glass door shut behind me. The lock clicked, sounding like a gunshot in the quiet room. Serafina was standing with her back to me, facing the floor-to-ceiling window. Her hands were planted flat on her desk, her shoulders rigid. "You want something, Miss Cohen?" she asked, her tone made of brittle, cracking ice. I closed the door behind me. The click echoed in the silence. "Yes," I said. Serafina didn't turn around. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it across the room. "I need you to fire me," I said quietly. That got her attention. She turned slowly, her expression controlled, but something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe fear. "Excuse me?" I took a breath, steadying myself, gathering every ounce of courage I had left. "Fire me," I repeated, my voice stronger now. "You can do it now, or after I say what I need to say. But I need to say this first." Serafina's jaw tightened. "Leah, I need to have a life outside of you," I said, the words spilling out now, unstoppable. "You don't want me. You've made that crystal clear with your actions for the past 7 weeks." My voice shook, but I kept going. "But you won't give me the space to meet other people either. You keep me here late every single night for work that could wait until morning. You sabotage every attempt I make to have something, anything, that isn't you." Serafina's hands curled into fists at her sides. "You froze me out after the hotel," I continued, my voice breaking now. "You made me feel like that night meant nothing, like I meant nothing." A tear slid down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. "Maybe," I whispered, "you could at least let me go out with your best friend. At least Jade actually likes me." The silence that followed was deafening, only the sound of the rain hitting the glass, only the frantic beating of my own heart. "Is that what you think?" Serafina asked. The icy CEO was gone. Her voice was a raw, trembling rasp. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in her. "What? That I don't want you?" My heart lurched violently against my ribs. "You've made it very clear. I can't stop thinking about you," Serafina said, the words bursting out of her like they'd been held back behind a dam for too long. I froze. Serafina took a step closer, her perfect control finally cracking, shattering into a million pieces. "I haven't stopped thinking about you since that hotel room," she confessed, her voice shaking now. "Since I woke up with you in my arms and realized I didn't want to let you go. Since I felt you breathing against me, and knew I was in terrible, deep trouble." I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. "I pushed you away," Serafina continued, stepping closer still. "Because I'm still married. Because my life is a disaster. Because Genevieve doesn't want to let a divorce happen, and she's using everything she can to make me stay. Because letting you close to me felt like the most reckless, dangerous thing I could possibly do." She crossed the room, grabbing my hips and backing me up until my spine hit the frosted glass door. "I have spent the last 7 weeks losing my fucking mind over you," Serafina breathed, her face inches from mine, her dark eyes feral and consumed. "I pushed you away because I am terrified of you, Leah. Because the second I let you in, I knew I would never, ever be able to let you go." My chest heaved. "Serafina, you think I kept you here late because of a briefing?" she demanded, her gaze dropping to my trembling lips. "I kept you here because I heard that woman's voice on the phone with you, and it made me want to tear this entire building apart with my bare hands. I kept you here because the thought of someone else touching you makes me sick." She stopped, her jaw clenching so hard a muscle twitched in her cheek. "It's been torture," she admitted, a sob caught in my throat. "That's not fair," I whispered. "I know," Serafina said, her voice breaking. "I know it's not fair to you. I know I have no right to keep you here, when I can't give you what you deserve." She took another step, pressing her body flush against mine. The heat of her was intoxicating. "But I can't let you go," she whispered, burying her face into the curve of my neck, her breath hot against my pulse. "I can't hear another woman's voice in the background when I call you. I can't watch you be with anyone else, and pretend I don't care." A tear slipped hot down my cheek. The confession was messy, unhinged, and the most intoxicating thing I had ever heard. I tangled my trembling hands in her collar. "Then why did you stop Jade?" Serafina pulled back just enough to look down at me with a dark, possessive fire in her eyes. "Because I can't imagine anyone else having you," she snarled softly. "Not even Jade." I shook my head, pushing weakly against her shoulders, trying desperately to protect whatever was left of my heart. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking. You don't actually have feelings for me. You're just territorial. You're too controlled to want me the way you're saying. Serafina froze. The possessive anger in her eyes instantly shattered. What replaced it was so exposed, so incredibly raw, it made the breath punch out of my lungs. Her hand lifted slowly. For the first time since I had met her, the untouchable CEO's fingers were actually trembling. She brushed my jaw with a tenderness that made my knees give way. I'm saying, she whispered, her thumb tracing my cheekbone, that I want you, Leah. My breath stopped. I've wanted you from the day you walked onto this floor with your color-coded folders and your careful smile, she confessed, the words pouring out of her like a dam breaking. I've wanted you every morning when you brought me coffee, every late night when you stayed without being asked, every moment you made my life easier without expecting a single thing in return. Her thumb stroked my cheek, catching a stray tear. I've been fighting it because I thought I could control it, she said, her voice turning thick and raw. But I can't. I closed my eyes, leaning into her touch despite everything, letting out a shattered sigh. I'm still married, Serafina said quietly, her forehead coming to rest against mine. I'm still a mess. The divorce is ugly, and Genevieve won't let go easily. It's reckless and complicated, and probably a terrible idea. She tilted my face up until I was forced to look at her. Her eyes were storm grey, desperate, and more vulnerable than I had ever seen them. But if you think, she whispered, that I'm too controlled to have feelings for you, that I don't lie awake at night remembering exactly what it felt like to hold you, that I haven't been dying inside watching you slip away from me. She leaned in, almost like she wants to kiss me, her lips hovering just a fraction of an inch from mine. Tonight, she whispered. Come to my penthouse tonight, the request sounding like a prayer. If you want to know exactly how much control I've been losing. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Serafina, I whispered. Hearing her name on my lips seemed to undo something fundamental in her. Say yes, she pleaded softly, desperately. Please, Leah, say yes. I opened my eyes and found hers. Vulnerable, terrified of being rejected. All the massive, icy walls of Serafina Sterling had finally collapsed. Yes, I breathed. Serafina's eyes closed briefly as a heavy, shuddering wave of relief washed over her face. When she opened them again, they were darker, filled with 7 weeks of starving want she was no longer trying to bury. Go home, she commanded softly, her voice rough. I will send my driver to pick you up at 8:30. Don't be late. Okay, I whispered, my pulse thrumming in my veins. Serafina's hand slid from my face, trailing agonizingly down my arm until her fingers found mine. She laced them together, holding my hand tightly like I was something precious she had almost lost. And Leah, she murmured, her thumb rubbing over my knuckles. Yes, once you step into that car tonight, she said, her voice dropping into a low, heavy promise. I'm not your boss anymore. My chest heaved. I squeezed her hand back, my voice shaking. What are you? Serafina's lips curved into the smallest, most dangerous smile I'd ever seen. Come find out for yourself, she whispered. The words echoed in my head the entire drive home. Not a suggestion. A command. A promise. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my penthouse door. I stood in the middle of my small living room, the sounds of the city outside muffled and distant. My own penthouse, my own safe space, suddenly felt like a temporary waiting room. A place I was just passing through before my real life began. Tonight. The word was a brand on my mind. What did it mean? Dinner? A conversation without the glass walls of the office between us. Or something more. She had chosen me. After weeks of silent observation, of pushing me away, of making me feel like I was a problem she was trying to solve, she had finally admitted it. I don't want anyone to have you. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of my TV screen. I saw a woman whose hair was a mess from a day of stress, whose eyes were wide with a terrifying, beautiful hope. What do you wear for tonight with Serafina Sterling? I showered, my mind racing. The hot water did nothing to calm my nerves. I kept replaying the moment in her office, her hand on my jaw, her mouth on mine. I had stood up to her, ready to walk away, and instead she had pulled me closer than I had ever dared to dream. I changed 3 times. A dress, too formal. Jeans, too casual. I finally settled on a pair of simple, well-fitting black trousers and a soft, silk blend blouse in a deep emerald green. It was elegant but not trying too hard. It felt like me, or the version of me I wanted to be for her. I did my makeup with trembling hands. A little mascara, a touch of color on my lips. Just enough to feel put together. Not enough to look like I was expecting anything. Because that was the problem. I was expecting everything. At 8:30 p.m., a message lit up my phone. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew instantly who it was from. The car is downstairs. No name, no hello. Just a command. Of course. I took one last look in the mirror, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Then I walked out the door. The ride to her penthouse was silent. The driver didn't speak. The city moved past the tinted windows in a blur of light and shadow. I was driven through the private entrance of a building so tall and sleek it looked like it had been carved from the night sky itself. The private elevator ascended in silence, my reflection in the polished steel walls looking back at me with wide, nervous eyes. When the doors opened, they didn't open into a lobby. They opened directly into her penthouse. And there she was. What happens next? How the CEO evaporated. How 7 weeks of restraint finally breaks. How the night unfolds. That's only on Patreon. Because some stories are just too intense, too intimate, and too private for this platform. But if you want to know what happens when Serafina Sterling finally stops being controlled, you know where to find me. Click the first link in the description, or the pinned comment, to join me there.